The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return.
Hello, I'm Joni Siegel, the host of the Addiction Podcast. In 2022, over 100,000 people died from drug and alcohol abuse, and that number is growing daily. Fentanyl poisoning, pot, cocaine, heroin, and even psychedelics and alcohol all contribute to this crisis, while we're bombarded with promotions from thousands of rehabs. Newborns are born addicted, and the majority of homeless people struggle with drug addiction. Drug dealers exploit online resources to sell to teens, and antidepressant use is spiraling out of control. This podcast features brutally honest guest interviews revealing harsh realities and offering hope and solutions through their stories. We don't sugarcoat anything. Guests speak raw and real. More importantly, you'll find inspiration to understand, overcome, and achieve recovery, whether for yourself or to help others, some within your own family, many among your friends or associates. Whether you're seeking help or just a glimmer of hope, our podcast equips you with the latest insights to confront this generational battle. Many listeners tell us they want to join the fight, but do not have the time or money to act, lobby, or just help. If that's you, go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and see how you can help. John Bitinas, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Joni. It's really great to be here with you today.
And I'm interested to hear from you. I know that you did the Narconon program, and I know that there are differences with that program from other rehabs. What was the point at which you realized on the program that this was different and this was going to make the change you needed?
Yeah, thank you. I think that the biggest thing that helped me was understanding that going through other programs that were giving me one drug to get off of another wasn't really a solution.
Hi, my name is Amy Newman, and my husband Bobby and I have a business called Newman Intervention Services. We provide intervention services for families who have loved ones struggling with drug addiction. Our goal is to help individuals get the support and treatment they need to overcome addiction and start on the path to recovery. With our personalized and compassionate approach, we guide families through the challenging process of getting their loved one into rehab and onto a road of a healthier future. Together, we can make a positive difference in the lives of those affected by drugs. If you or someone you know is in need of an intervention, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let's work together and bring hope and healing to those battling addiction.
Call 866-989-4499 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby.
When you're young, you look at the people who are supposed to be the professionals in the field. But as you get older, you start to realize that when you just continue to do the same thing over and over again, and you're not getting the result that you want, that something's not working here. So when I went to Narconon, I was like, this is the first time I found something that was natural, that was drug-free. And it just kind of made sense with my philosophy, which was, I don't want to be a slave to drugs or take one drug to get off of another drug. So that's really what changed for me.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
John, tell us about your background, your drug history. How did you get started on drugs? How did you go down that path?
Sure. So when I was a child, when I was about 7 years old, I had a really hard time paying attention in school. And I was told at a young age that I had hyperactivity or ADD or ADHD. And so my mom, being a teacher, she, at the time used a lot of the information that she had to her, available to her. And she had me take some tests and she had me see a specialist. And at 7 years old, I was definitively told that I was ADD, ADHD. And I was quickly put on a drug called Ritalin. And back in the 90s, that was a pretty big thing. A lot of kids were put on that drug.
Yep.
And being told that you need to take a drug to be normal is kind of a mindset, and you kind of set yourself up. And that's exactly what it did for me. When I was 7, I was told I needed to take a drug to be normal. And I took this drug and it just basically turned into this thing that just continued to evolve. Marijuana is a drug. I want to be normal. Alcohol is a drug. I want to be normal. Cocaine, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yes, exactly. Did you take, it's my understanding, and again, I don't have personal reality on this, but it's my understanding that when you're 7 and you take Ritalin, it calms you down, but that when you become a teenager, it can be an upper. Were you then prescribed other drugs to counteract those effects of the Ritalin?
Great question. I actually stayed on this drug for probably about 14 years.
Wow.
And yeah. And as I got older, I tended to actually, begin to experiment or abuse this drug, which, it did to some degree help me calm down. But what was really interesting is, as a child, I was always curious. I was a very curious, very kind of like scientific, and always looking and just really interested in life, And I found that when I was put on this drug, it did to some degree kind of strip away that curiosity that I had, or that vigor that I had for life. And that's kind of where I felt like I began to kind of lose a little bit of part of myself. Yep. At a young age. Yep. And then as time went on, I was like, there's something here that's not right. But again, the adults, the professionals, they're the ones that tell me this is what I need to do, and who am I to question them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And, truthfully, if I can just make an editorial comment, for parents who may possibly have been presented with the situation of a child who has been labeled hyperactive, if you don't know what to do about it, who are you going to listen to? And unfortunately, the quote-unquote authorities in the field are those who will prescribe drugs like Ritalin. And It's unfortunate. I would urge parents, though, if you have gotten that advice, to do a little bit more research. Nowadays with the internet, you can find all kinds of natural alternatives to something like that. So that's my editorial comment.
And just as an addition to that, as I got older, in my mid-20s, I actually discovered that I had a little bit of like a gluten intolerance. And I found that when I kind of removed some of that from my diet, that actually had a huge impact.
Interesting.
That helped me not get as so distracted or irritable and those kinds of things. So I definitely think that there's also a dietary aspect, especially in the world we live today.
Absolutely. And we know, if you feed a child, Frosted Flakes for breakfast, chances are that they're going to, bounce off the walls, because that's just plain sugar and carbs and no protein, but it's cheap. So, and I realize too that a lot of times families are challenged economically, and that is the kind of breakfast a child has. And so when you're getting state medical care or health care, and they're telling you, oh, just use this drug, I get it. I do get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you abused Ritalin, you said, for about 14 years.
Well, I was prescribed it probably for the last 2 years that I was using it. Did I kind of maybe abuse a little bit more of it?
I got it.
I was definitely more in a daily user, of marijuana, abusing alcohol, cocaine, LSD, mushrooms, things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
You went hardcore.
Well, yeah. And, I guess too, just thinking with the professionals that are in your life when you're a kid, we don't think about how deep set those, when they tell you well, you need to take this drug, to fit in, to be normal, how that kind of just sets this channel in your thinking.
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast, or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review.
We appreciate you listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. We don't do this podcast because we are former addicts. We don't do this podcast because we have loved ones who have suffered from addiction. We do this podcast because we feel that addiction is one of the biggest problems facing the world today, and that no matter who you are, no matter your religion, no matter your income status, no matter your race, no matter anything about you, addiction affects you. This podcast is a free resource for anybody looking for help with addiction.
And that really, for me, just as I got older and was able to kind of look at it for myself, be like, wow, that was a really big mindset that I really adopted that really wasn't me, you know?
I understand. I can totally understand that.
Sure.
What made you decide to, like, we call this podcast The Point of No Return because we want to kind of know at what point did you decide, I have to get help, I have to get clean?
Awesome question. I actually had 2 incidents in my life. The first one is when I was 19 years old. I went to a friend's party, and I had a college entrance exam the next day. So I thought I would just stop in and then, say hi and leave. I saw some friends I haven't seen in a while, so I stayed a lot longer than I planned. And I had too much alcohol. And roughly at about 2:30 in the morning, my friends were urging me not to go home. But I was like, no, I have to this college entrance exam the next day. So I got behind the wheel of the car and I drove home, and I ended up hitting a telephone pole. And if I didn't have my seatbelt on, I literally would have went through the windshield and been electrocuted to death.
Wow.
So there was a couple things. The main thing was, obviously, I was under the influence of alcohol and should have been driving. I was arrested that day. And the next day, my mom and my dad, they came to see me. And my mom was crying. And I didn't quite understand what it was that was, so sad. I'm like, it's a car. I'm okay. And she had said to me, she goes, John, she goes, you probably don't realize this, but your brother, Ted, passed away of cancer on that same day, July 11th, 26 years earlier.
Wow.
So, for me, that just kind of really, really hit home. And even though I was still kind of numb with using drugs and alcohol, it definitely hit in a place that was real.
Wow.
And at that point, I'm just like, I'm 19 years old. I'm a kid, but I'm like, if I keep going on this path of what I'm doing, it's not going to work.
Right.
That's when I went to my first treatment program, which was like kind of a 30-day program.
Mm-hmm.
You were given drugs like lithium, other drugs to come off alcohol. And we talk, we 12-step type programs.
Right.
And it's good when and if those work for people, that's amazing. And all the power to you. For me, once my insurance stopped at the end of the 30 days and, I'm cured. So, I wanted to be sober and I wanted to be clean. I really wanted those things, but I just wasn't given the tools that were going to help me to actually keep that.
Right.
Fast forward up to 2005. My dad, and this is important, my father, he actually had lupus, and this is a big part of my addiction. And he was actually diagnosed with dementia really early on in life, when he was about 52.
Wow.
And being the youngest in my family, my brother, my sister, they had all kind of moved out. My mom and I were basically just there with my dad, and we were just kind of seeing this slow decline. addiction is one of these things where it's never someone wakes up one day and they're like, hey, I want to be an addict. It's real things in life occur, real, problems in life. And
Right.
we're trying to come up with workable solutions to like handle that. So for me, in order to confront this situation that was happening to my dad, I turned to drugs and alcohol as a solution to just, not be present and have to experience that.
How old were you then in 2005?
Gosh. I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
Yeah, my early 20s. Things health-wise for him started to go downhill when I was about 12 or 13. He had some health problems, but it wasn't until, early 20s, late teens that I started to see this progression going on. For me, I got a call one day that my dad wasn't doing well and that I needed to come home. He actually was hospitalized. And at this time, I wasn't doing well at my life. I was drinking every day, having a hard time on my job. I was traveling all around the country, so I wasn't home in front of my family. They honestly didn't know how I was doing. And so I got an airplane and I came home, essentially getting prepared to say goodbye to my father. And at the time, it was the only time in my life where I've ever been advanced to first class because there was no one on the plane.
Mm.
And the problem with that is you get free alcohol.
You get free alcohol.
And I just like took advantage of it. And by the time I arrived, I was extremely inebriated to the point where my brother, my brother-in-law, my family, they honestly just didn't want to disrespect my dad's memory with having me there in that condition. And I don't blame them at all. So it was the only time I could just say goodbye to my dad while he was still technically awake. So they had to put him on life support. And then I came in the next day and said goodbye to him. And we let him go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a lot to deal with in your early 20s. I mean, it's a lot to deal with at any time, but in your early 20s.
Yeah. So at his wake, I just made a promise that I was going to change my life. And I was really, that's really for me where I was like, I have to do this. I'm going to end up in prison or I'm going to end up dead.
Right.
That's where I was. So a couple of months pass and I was back on the road working, and a friend of mine and I that I was working with together, we were involved in a very bad car accident to the point where he was driving, I was the passenger. We flipped his car upside down and we landed in someone's backyard.
Wow. Had he been drinking?
He had been drinking, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the situation, I basically fled the scene, didn't take any responsibility, just, left the scene. Was picked up by police officers that were nice enough to actually drop me off at the hotel that I was staying at. When I walked upstairs to go to the hotel, I opened the door, and far in the way, in the distance, I could see the mirror. And I could just feel this hand like on my shoulder. And it was like, you can go left or you can go right, but you can't go back. That was the moment in my life where I'm like, I have to become honest with myself because I can't keep BSing myself. This isn't the way to live your life. And this is not what, this isn't my purpose.
Right.
So, I just basically became honest with my family, and I'm like, look, I really need help. I really need to do something about this. And because if I don't, I'm not going to be here for long. And that's where everything changed. And that was over 18 and a half years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what treatment, did you go into another treatment program at the time?
So at that point, I went into the Narconon program.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And Narconon was in Oklahoma. Full transparency, I'd been through the Narconon program before. At this point, I went through the program in 2004. I didn't go there with all the intentions of doing it for myself. I went there with the intention of doing it for my family, kind of placating them. So I hadn't really hit my rock bottom yet.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how great a program is. If you're not willing to want to change your life, move forward, it's just not going to work. You totally need to apply yourself 100%.
Yep.
When I went through the program, I learned a lot about myself, and there were things about the program that really made sense to me, that it was natural. They're not giving me drugs to get off of drugs. They're helping me to get my life back, and they're giving me the tools that I need. But I wasn't receptive the first time that I went through it to really get it.
Right.
But I knew that in going back to it, that it was the place that was actually going to be able to help me if I just took the time to really apply myself. And so in 2006, March 6, 2006, I did. I arrived at the program, and it was the best thing, that I had ever done.
And when you say it's drug-free, how do they get you off the how do you withdraw if they're not giving you some kind of mood stabilizers, if you will?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, like in today's world, there's a lot of what we call poly abusers, right? People who are using, the days of people just using heroin or like cocaine is long gone, right? So for people in the treatment field, that does create a lot more challenges. So like any treatment program, they would have a medical detoxification, that's run by a doctor. Obviously, that's important because they want to make sure that anybody coming off of drugs can start a program safely.
Right.
Number one. But to answer your question, something that was different about Narconon is the education aspect. Like, I learned more than anything just kind of like what actually drugs were doing. Which no matter what other treatment program I've ever been into, no one ever actually explained to me like the decisions I was making and how it was physically affecting me.
Right.
And that was the first time that I actually kind of really got a really good idea about that. For example, like alcohol, you strip your body of a lot of vitamins, essential vitamins and nutrition. Smoking cigarettes, I smoked all the time. I was burning up lots of nutrition and vitamins in my body. So this program actually helped me really understand that in order to kind of really combat the program and start to like go through like a withdrawal portion of it, they help you to build your nutrition back up by giving your body exactly what it's been needing, which is vitamins, nutrients. And the other thing is, like, let's take a drug like heroin. Now, I never used opiates or anything like that, but a lot of people do struggle with it, and a lot of people fear the withdrawal. Same thing with alcohol.
Because you get sick.
Or you
get DTs or whatever. With alcohol, you can die.
And a lot of people don't want to kind of have to experience that, which is why they keep themselves in that spiral.
Right.
So what Narconon did that was a lot different is they helped by basically having you make sure that you just take your attention off yourself. And it's an interesting concept, but like if I'm just like sitting in a room thinking about how bad I feel, I'm not going to be in very good condition, right? It's like you can be your own worst enemy. So what the program did that was a lot different is they just keep you extremely busy. In other words, they keep your attention outward and like not on yourself, but like, I don't know, like doing things, staying busy, going for walks, just staying really active, keeping your attention outward, not inward. And it's interesting when you help a person for 2 or 3 days where you're just constantly keeping them busy, for that time period, believe it or not, they will literally have a pain-free, drug-free withdrawal.
Wow.
Because they'll feel some stuff, but it'll be a lot lessened because one, they're getting the nutrition their body needs, and then two, they're keeping their attention where it needs to be, which is outward, not inward.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's the step that happens after the withdrawal?
Yeah. So this was actually one of the biggest things that really changed my life. There's a lot of philosophies about drugs, how they work, and you got to take a look at where that's coming from. A lot of treatment, rehab, it's big business. Pharmaceuticals, they're a big business, and they're married. A lot of them are. So Narconon's drug-free, which I really kind of liked. It's called the purification part of the program, or like it's a sauna program.
New Life Detox.
Yeah, thank you. And why it worked is because it helped to remove the toxins that were actually in my body that were actually keeping me addicted. When you take a drug, and this might be common knowledge for some people, it might be completely new, but it blew me away. When you take a drug, whether it's caffeine, nicotine, marijuana, cocaine, anything, you name it, what happens is it breaks down in your liver and your kidneys, and it travels through your bloodstream. So when you're under the influence of the drug, you're having these drugs travel through your bloodstream, which goes to your brain and makes you feel the effects of the drug. Well, lining the inside of your veins and your arteries is a very specific type of fat tissue called adipose fat tissue. And its sole job is to make sure that any toxins that are present in the bloodstream actually get pulled out of the bloodstream so that oxygen can freely flow through your body, keep you alive. Well, when you're under the influence of drugs, those toxins get pulled into the fat tissue, and they actually stay there for years, roughly about 5 to 7 years, and is the main reason why people can't quit using drugs. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is somewhat reminiscent of, and I never did LSD, but you hear about LSD flashbacks.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So LSD is a little bit different.
Okay.
LSD is a little bit different because it's actually like a crystal.
Okay.
Instead of like a regular drug metabolite, which would kind of break down in your liver and kidneys, an LSD does not break down. They're actually permanently in your body, and they can cut through all the fat tissue and actually adhere to your bone. And so when one of those crystals or what have you actually becomes loose, it can re-enter the bloodstream, which creates, an LSD flashback or a feeling of that kind of a thing.
Okay. I stand corrected. But anyway,
no, you're right though. You're right though.
The toxins. So the toxins are in the tissue, but what does that feel like when you're getting that out of there? How does that work? Don't you get cravings or?
Well, that's just it. The main reason why people cannot quit using drugs is because they have these drugs that store in their fat for 5 to 7 years. So whenever a person gets mad, excited, stressed out, or exercises, their body burns up, calories and fat for energy. And the stuff that's stored in their fat has to go somewhere. One place that it goes is back into the bloodstream and straight to the brain, giving a person a tiny taste of that drug, which makes them want to go out and use drugs again.
Right.
And literally, this is why people cannot quit using drugs. They find themselves in a position where they're, they don't take a drug for a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, and then someone calls them and they're like, or they decide to call somebody that they know they shouldn't be around. They've got this drugs just constantly recycling through their body. So what the New Life Detoxification does is it's a sauna program that uses vitamins. One of the vitamins is niacin, B3. And what it does is it actually goes into the fat tissue, and it brings out all of the drugs and all of the toxins that store in your fat tissue. So you'll exercise for about 15 to 20 minutes to get your heart, pumping really good, and for the niacin to work its way into the fat tissue. And then you get on a scale. So let's say the scale says 150 pounds. You'll take a big glass of water, and then you'll go into a sauna, and you'll sweat for about 10 or 15 minutes. You'll get out. You'll get another big glass of water, and then you'll go back into the sauna. And we'll do this on average up to about 5 hours a day, in and out, in and out, in and out. And in that time frame, you'll drink about 2 to 3 gallons of water, which is the equivalent of, 12 to 15 pounds. But at the end of the 5 hours, you weigh yourself and you'll be about 150 to 152 pounds.
Wow.
So you push all of these toxins out of your body, and you do this on average for about 20 to 30 days in a row. And it's incredible. For me, I quit smoking cigarettes, which I tried to do, and it helped me a lot. I quit taking Ritalin, and then you just get all this stuff out of your body. And once you handle the physical aspect of what's actually keeping you, addicted, you're able to, start handling some of the emotional, kind of like the mental stuff. that continue to make those decisions over and over again. So that was a huge part of the program that was different than any other place I'd ever tried.
So first of all, that's phenomenal. And I think that is one of the key pieces of technology that is missing from any other rehab, because if you don't get the toxins out of the fatty tissues, you can continue to crave the drugs at random times in your life. What was interesting and what you said was that you were able to stop taking Ritalin. And I think, I don't know exactly the chemical makeup of Ritalin, but I know that with some psychiatric medications, you can't just stop taking them, but you were able to stop.
That's correct. And I know a lot of it, again, whenever a person's withdrawing or, entering any program, they have to go through some medical detoxification.
Right.
Because a person should never just decide to stop, and if they do, they need to make sure that they're prepared to go through whatever they need to go through.
Right.
But ultimately, for me, I had just had enough of it, and I just didn't necessarily want to put drugs in my body anymore. I was just done with it.
Right. Yeah. What was your what would you say was your personal win on the detox part of the program?
This is a small thing, and it's kind of funny. But what I noticed almost instantly is I started dreaming again. Which is an interesting thing when when you've numbed yourself for so many years, you kind of, to some degree, stop reaching in life. You're just kind of existing and kind of going like this.
Yep.
You might not see it. So,
every day becomes a struggle for more drugs. Yeah, so that is there is no long-term goal. It's waking up in the morning. How am I going to get high again? That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So for the first time, I kind of felt like I kind of had that things were going to be okay, that I was getting better, that I could just kind of see in myself, my complexion, my appetite. I was gaining more weight, which was really good. And I just kind of felt a lot better about myself, just because I didn't realize how bad the physical effects of having the drugs in me was actually causing my mindset and just making me feel like, there was no hope. So once I got that out of my body, it just kind of gave me hope again.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I've said this so many times on the podcast, but it bears repeating because I never know who starts listening on this episode. But what a lot of people don't understand, when someone is addicted to these drugs, it's not, sometimes there are parents or loved ones who go, why can't he or she just stop? Yeah. And what they might not realize is that there is a physical aspect to the addiction that causes cravings and the physical need to relapse. There's also mental addiction. There's also a mental aspect and a spiritual aspect. But what you just described is you handle the physical aspect, and now you're looking at the mental and spiritual advantage of that.
That's really well said. Just to kind of piggyback on that, the person who takes the drug is not the enemy. It's the drugs they put in their body that makes them make the decisions that they do. And the problem with that is there's so many, like family it's hard because addiction is the only thing in this world that's not prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
It takes all types. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, how much your bank account, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It takes all types. And it affects everybody. It affects mom, dad, brother, sister. It affects everybody all the way up the line. And so when you're trying to help a person get off drugs, you also need to take into account the family aspect as well. You need to make sure that when, Johnny's getting clean, mom and dad stop enabling, or, all of those things that need to go into it, they need to be talked to as well.
Mm-hmm. Did your
Anyway,
family enable you, do you think?
no, I think that they did a very good job. My family did a great job. They're like, look, you need, they knew that I needed help, and they
Right.
knew that I had tried different things. And I think the problem is that, everybody wants to do the right thing for their family. Everybody does. The problem is there's so many opinions. There's so many things that are out there, um, that you just finding the right one without getting sold a bill of goods or sold on something that's actually not gonna help the person in the long run,
Yep.
uh, is so important. It's separating like the business from like the help part of it.
Yep.
And for me, having gone through the program before and just seeing what I got from it, even though I didn't apply it, I just knew that there was something there that if I just opened my ears and just really, really learned a little bit more, I could really use this stuff and it could change my life.
And did it for yourself, like you said, rather than
Exactly.
just for everybody around you.
That's everything.
What would you say? I know that after you do that, then you do some exercises that kind of help you even further get out of your own head and more into the present. But then you do some life skills courses, if you will.
Yeah.
What did you get from those? How did those change you?
That's a great question. So, once you handle the physical part, you do the New Life detoxification program, you get the drugs out, you're then given the tools that are actually going to help you stay sober and clean. And just because you're not taking drugs anymore doesn't mean life's not going to continue to come at you. So what this program did is they kind of help by kind of arming you with the tools that you're going to need to literally confront life, because it's going to still come at you, so that you're not reacting to everything, that's coming at you, and you don't resolve to using drugs and alcohol as a solution again to the problems that are still there, and that's a big point of it. So one of the things they do is they help to just kind of make sure that you just feel comfortable. They make you feel kind of like comfortable being in your own skin, just being, in front of somebody, talking to somebody, having a conversation. And so there's different tools that they apply there. They do a lot of different kind of like objective exercises, which are really fantastic. And what they do is they kind of help you to kind of not be stuck in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important because, you can be clean, you can be sober, and now your mind's clear, right? So you're thinking a lot clearly. And when you're thinking clearly, it's very easy to resort to like going back and look at all the wreckage that's behind you and then feeling really bad about it.
Right. Right. Like,
So
boy, did I mess up.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they're like, wow, now that I see it, I'm like, wow, I was really, so, the program does a great job of helping you to kind of move from living kind of in the past where your attention may be to kind of moving you more to kind of, in the present.
Right.
And that's really powerful,
Mm-hmm.
because it then helps people to be able to kind of really take a look at where they are. And also how much, how creative they've been. Like, that was something for me too. I was like, wow, like I was really creative on how I got, drugs or alcohol and all these things. Man, if I just used that, towards something that was more constructive, I would be. So
we have had former addicts talk about how they were so good at selling or, convincing people that they were not doing drugs, that if they use that what's the word? What's I'm trying to get at? Their charisma toward a good goal that might benefit them without drugs, that they could do really well. Anyway, it's another way of saying what you just said. Keep going. I'll be quiet.
No, it's so true though. I mean, it's like we're all very talented people. So something that I loved about the program was I knew that life after the program was still going to be there, and I kind of knew what I was going to be facing and things that were coming my way. And there was a lot I didn't know. But in all fairness, the only reason I'm clean and sober today for as long as I've been is because I have these tools and I use them every day. You know,
Give me an example of what that is.
Yeah, no problem. So, well, I'll tell you, like when I finished the program, I was literally about to leave 2 or 3 days before I was leaving. And I found out that I had a warrant out for my arrest in the state of Texas. And, normally the old John before the program would have been, running in the other direction. Like, I'm not going to look at that. But I knew that I had changed, and I knew that I wasn't going to, do the same things that I was doing before, because I'm trying to get myself out of the condition that I was in. I want to improve, the new John. So I just, confronted it head on and got on a bus and went there, turned myself in, and, did my time there and then got out. And that made all the difference, because that's kind of where I was like, wow, like I'm actually applying what I learned.
That's huge. I mean, that's monumental.
Yeah. And it wasn't a pleasant experience, but going through it, knowing that I was doing it with the intention that this isn't forever. This is, there's a better life on the other side of this, but you have to get through it.
Yeah.
It made all the difference, because I could now see a future. I could see what my present actions were going to lead me to.
Right.
And that's another thing the program does, is it kind of helps you to give you these basic kind of like formulas in life that you can apply to kind of improve, your condition in life. So we come into this thing, some of us are broken, some of us don't know, where we are, what's happening. And they help us kind of give a foothold so that we can just take the next step and to improve ourselves, to take the next step to improve ourselves, and take the next step, to the point where if we just literally just continue taking the next steps and just kind of following these actions, we find ourselves way over here doing so much better. And it takes time, because it took a lot of time for you to get in the condition you're in. Yep. So it takes a little bit of time and work to get out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. What's your life like now, John? And when did you finish the program the second time?
I finished the program beginning of October 2006.
Okay.
Or excuse me, beginning of November 2006. And
almost, what is that? 16 years, almost.
Yeah.
18 years. Sorry.
18 years, yeah.
I can't do the math.
No,
so what is your life like now? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so I'm happily married. My wife and I have been married almost 10 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. We help a lot of people with financial literacy, and we do a lot of work with protecting, we do a lot of insurance, retirement solutions. My wife and I just really like helping people. And so we spend a lot of time just in having my experience and my, background, and being able to talk to people about what they're going through and what I've been through. We're all people in life, and we all have stuff that we've dealt with. And the thing about this type of experience with drugs and with alcohol is that no matter who you are, right, everybody's been touched by this.
Yep.
Whether you yourself have used it, or you have family members or coworkers or whatever, we live in a world today where it's everywhere. And so I think the humility and dealing with, the illness that my father had, and gaining the patience and dealing with that. And for me, in beating, this addiction and getting on the other side of it, being able to be a positive influence to other people and showing them and being a shining example that you too can be sober. But also continuing to live a drug-free life, and a life that is complete without drugs or alcohol. It's so important. And we've prospered really well, my wife and I. She's an artist. We sell her artwork all over the world. We just absolutely love it. And we have a great relationship. So it's good. I have a great relationship with my family. Like everything is really, really good.
That's awesome. You are truly a success story, John. Thank you for being willing to talk to us today and telling us about your story and the Narconon program as you went through it. Appreciate you sharing it. And hopefully people who are listening might want to reach out and check it out.
Awesome. That sounds great. And thank you so much for having me, Joni.
Thank you for listening today. We have obviously had over almost 400 guests on the podcast, many of whom are in recovery. Some have done the Narconon program. Some have gone through other programs. I don't know that there's a one-size-fits-all with treatment programs, but I will tell you that from what we know, Narconon is probably the best that's out there. I wouldn't say probably. It is the best that's out there. So check it out. There's you can just go to narconon.org and they will help you find a treatment program near you.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information, reach out to us on Facebook or go to www.theaddictionpodcast.com. Our email is theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com.